This episode of Back to the Roots podcast is brought to you by Byron Seeds. The folks at Byron Seeds believe organic requires a different perspective, plan, and approach. Organic isn't simply a different type of product or even a different way of farming. It's a different way of thinking, planning, commitment. It's a different philosophy on how to feed the world. Many won't understand, but the people at Byron Seeds do. We're owned by organic dairy farmers. We not only have the product, but we plan, manage, and execute organic. We speak your language, we share your struggles, and we laud your successes. Organic isn't a way of doing business, it's a community. We learn from each other. We're in this together. We'd be glad to talk cropping plans, management systems, the road to profitability. We understand what you're trying to do. We're farmers just like you. Visit us at byronseeds.net or give us a call at 800-801-3596. And thanks to Byron Seeds. Regional farmer updates are also brought to you by Soil Biotics. Soil Biotics is proud to continue our 10th anniversary celebration with additional discounts on our high-quality organic soil amendments and specialty products this spring. In April, receive a 10% discount on Organic Growth Boost and Organic Growth Supplement 20. The discount is on product packaged in cases, pails, drums, and totes, all while supplies last, and it is applicable to orders placed in April for delivery in April or May. For product details, visit soilbiotics.com.
Hello, everyone. This is Ann Miller from Holmes County, Ohio. On a beautiful day in April, just as I left the house to come over to the phone, I looked out the window and there was Mom scratching around in the garden. It's still early, but that's just a good way to describe April right now here in Ohio. And then we have our phone in a small cabin, and as I entered there, my dad has mason bee boxes on the outside. And I saw the mason bees were flying. So that's also positive. We had a good winter, but spring is just such a beautiful, beautiful time of the year. Right now, our weather is a bit dry for this time of year, which is nice. We don't have nearly the mud to hassle with. Our cows are not yet on pasture, so we let them out just to get exercise and some sunshine. But right now, March was basically a good way to describe March for us here. We had cows freshening. All of our spring freshening cows freshened in the month of March. So that totally took our time. I mean, we had calves and fresh cows, and it kept everybody busy. Most was the main thing. And then anytime that my husband had extra time, he was in the field plowing. They sowed their oats in March, which was early. But he always thinks raising oats organically for grain, if he gets them out early, as they harvest, if it gets really warm, we have tremendous ragweed issues. And so if he gets them out early, and if the weather cooperates, as things sometimes don't, but sometimes they do, then we get a beautiful crop of oats. Our oats primarily we use for feeding our draft horses. Right now we've got daffodils blooming, and we've planted peas and trying to get the onions in. I have a small greenhouse that I've been starting tomatoes, onion, peppers, cabbage, broccoli, that kind of thing. So we've got that up and going. We're busy with that. The garden right now, it's all a big waiting process mostly. My large garden, I mulch. I don't do any plowing. I just put composted manure from our bedded pack on the garden twice a year. And so when it's time to plant, there's no plowing or harrowing or tilling. I just scratch the mulch apart and plant my seeds in there. And it's been doing very well for us. Even in dry weather, it's great. Now, I had a problem with carrots once. It got too soggy for the carrots. But yes, things are going good here. We're staying busy. The fruit trees, we've been trimming fruit trees. And our blueberries, we discovered something from a friend of ours. She usually we put sawdust around her blueberry plants. because they like lots of acidic soil. And so someone told us use what we would call when you open the silo, the top layers are kind of moldy. Moldy silage is very good for blueberries. So we've been putting that on and have had a nice amount of success with that. The blueberries have been beautiful. So right now we've also got nesting birds. I have a wreath on the front door that has a house finch in it with a nest. So it's a Christmas wreath. I wanted to put it down because Christmas season is past. But with the bird in there, I guess we'll be looking at Christmas a little longer on the front door. But yes, otherwise we've been doing great here in Ohio and are really looking forward to the nice months of April and May here coming up. And also appreciative for the nice weather we had in March as the cows were freshening. That was a tremendous boost. Usually they're in a barn by themselves, but as they freshen, we let them out on a pasture, and they're out there all by themselves, and that has worked out great. If the weather cooperates, which it did this March. Okay, I think that's pretty much all from here. We'll see you in a couple months.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jolyn Mcclellan with Robert McClelland Dairy out in California in Sonoma County, so about 40 miles north of San Francisco. Just as a reminder, Robert and I milk about 260 cows on our dairy, and we've been with Organic Valley since 2011.
So, Jolynn, what has been going on the last couple of months since we spoke last?
Well, it is the height of our grazing season this time of year. So our cows have been pasturing. I believe last time we talked, I can't remember, we might have turned them out around that time or a little while after. So they've been out. Unfortunately, what hasn't been happening a lot of around here that we desperately need is rain. We had maybe a few showers in February after we spoke and a little bit in March, but nowhere near the totals of what we need. And things are looking pretty scary, to be frankly honest. Not quite sure, if we don't get any rain, how long our pasture season will be able to last. Will definitely be shortened compared to other years. There's been talks of some of us are already starting to talk to certifiers about having to file for a temporary variance. And the other thing that's concerning, you drive around the country and people's silage just isn't growing. So it's very concerning what's going to happen this year when it also comes to hay, since there's going to be so many more people needing to buy more. What's interesting is in my lifetime, so I'm 38 years old, I've never remembered, and I've even talked to some neighbors who are older than I. This year, March 31st, we had manure trucks here putting out some compost manure that we have, and there was a neighbor down the road that chopped some silage. And normally you would never dream of having those big vehicles in the fields this time of year. So that's sort of a picture of how dry things are here in California.
Is your pastures irrigated at all?
No, ours are not. We're dry farmers.
Okay, I did hear that in that area, are the water tables for irrigation probably low too?
For those that do irrigate, yes, I would imagine that. And actually, I was talking to, we have some property in a different county, talking to the ag commissioner from that county. He was sort of asking us just what our water situation is. And on that particular ranch, we depend on a well. And, it was a lease that we took over from my grandpa a long time ago. We've never really had to test it, we're worried about that water table too, for everyone's wells to be able to keep up and stuff. So, yeah, it's quite the year.
Yeah, here in Ohio, we've been dry as well, but nowhere
Mhm.
near where you are. It's been dry enough where you could like drive through the field in March, like I haven't done in years. But we're supposed to get quite a bit of rain the end of the week. Is there any rain in the forecast for you, or are you getting really concerned?
There is nothing in the forecast, so everyone is getting very concerned. I looked about 12 days out, and there's nothing. We were supposed to get a little bit today, and I think 2 days ago they took that away. So it's overcast today and kind of, well, cold for us. Might be warm to somebody else in this country right about now, especially those that are still in snow. But it's probably low 60s right now and a little bit of a breeze. And that's the
Oh,
other thing that hasn't been helpful. A few weeks ago we just get these March winds, and it was so windy, and that just adds to drying everything out as well. Um,
is the drought pretty widespread there in California, or is it kind of pockets here and pockets there?
It's pretty widespread. I know we didn't make a trip up to the Sierras this year, but I know the snow levels are extremely low, and this is a pretty big topic of conversation all across the state. There were some storms, I think, that maybe went down into the valley for a while, but I was talking to somebody from the valley, I think last week, and he said things were pretty bad down there as well.
When you're wet or dry, it just seems like it just keeps going and there's no relief.
Yeah, I
So
know.
hopefully you'll be getting relief soon. Like when you if you don't get relief, how much longer will you graze before there's nothing there?
You know, we are sort of heading in to the time of year where on a normal year, if we did get rain, it would just sort of be little showers here and there, not the big storm systems that bring in a couple inches. So that would probably help if we did get a little sprinkle. That would help prolong the grass season. Definitely not going to make up for those people who don't have enough water for their cattle. I might have mentioned the last time, we have neighbors that are hauling truckloads of water every single day just to water their animals. If we don't get rain, we can normally graze into like mid-June, some years even pushing it to the end of June. I mean, depending on where you are, us personally, we'll probably be okay through May, but maybe starting to feed them heavier starting in June, so a whole month early
Mm.
would be my guess. My husband's a little more of the expert on that than I, but
Boy, that just and the effects of a drought are the tail is so long, because not only is it going to affect the grazing, what's going to happen with your silage inventory and your hay inventory? It's going to
yeah,
drive everything through the roof.
yes, yes, that's what a big concern. Which I also talked to that county ag commissioner about. That we also need to be mindful not only of the water situation and watering animals, but also feeding them.
I imagine once you start hauling water to your animals, you really start realizing how much water they actually take.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Wow.
We haven't been
Well,
in the position where we've had to yet, but like I said, there are neighbors that haven't stopped since the fall.
and have you put up any hay or silage this year? Is what time of year does that normally start?
So that normally starts May, sometimes into June. I think there's been some years, maybe the end of April, you've seen them come in. We haven't done anything yet. And we personally, for us with silage, if we notice that some fields are sort of getting ahead of us, like we don't purposely plant for it and say those are our silage fields. If we get in a situation where some fields get a little ahead of us grazing wise, Robert will just stop putting cows there, and then we'll make that into volunteer silage. We also do buy silage from neighboring places. But this year, I don't know if we're going to really even have anything in here at home to put in for volunteer silage. There's maybe a field out back. I've noticed that he stopped putting animals in, but I drove by one of the neighbors' places yesterday, silage that we're supposed to buy, and I'm like, oh gosh, there's just not very much there.
Wow, I always feel so bad when you talk to one region and there's a drought, or like with John Banson last year, there were fires. It's hard to really imagine when you're not there. So I really appreciate the update, and I would just need everybody to help pray for rain in your area, because I always hate seeing farmers in a drought.
Yes.
So
thank you. Other than that, our kids are home this week from spring break. Well, not that much changes. My kids are still doing virtual school. So they have a nice little break from school, and they're getting ready. It sounds like we got some more information from our fairs. Our counties are still, in a certain color where we're big. Crowds can't happen, but it sounds like the fairs are going to try to do in-person shows for the kids, and it won't be a traditional show in the sense of all the species there on the same day and what have you, but they're going to have to take turns, during the week, every day of different species being there. And I think one fair is kind of talking like, I don't even know if the kids will be able to tie in the barns. You might have to kind of stay in the parking lot with your animal and be called to the judge. But our kids are pretty excited that they'll at least get to do some sort of show this year. So they're pretty excited about that. Starting to, they've had little calves born, and then they'll be getting their market pigs here pretty soon. So we'll be on that.
That's great news, and make sure that you let us know how they do in the future. When I think we're at least heading in the right direction, where they're letting more and more things go, and it's so great to hear, because it just seems it's not fair when kids are missing out on things that they only get to do a couple years in their life. So that's great news.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, Jolynn, thank you so much for taking the time to give us an update. Hopefully you'll get some rain, and hopefully the fairs and everything work out great for you. I really look forward to talking to you in a couple months.
Me too. Thank you very much.
So good morning. I'm Abbie Corse. I'm in Whitingham, Vermont. And this is my quick regional update. We are still waiting for spring to really hit. The last few months have been kind of for all of us a lot of meetings, a lot of planning. I've been really tied up quite a lot with the Vermont Climate Council work that I'm doing. I'm co-chairing the Agriculture and Ecosystems Subcommittee, and so that's been taking up a good amount of my time trying to assemble our team and think about the ways that we're going to craft recommendations to put into the climate plan for the state. And in addition, I was on Organic Valley's climate task force talking about, learning about the ways in which emissions are set out for Organic Valley, and some of the thinking about how we're going to move forward as a cooperative in thinking about climate farming and climate resilience. And we just had our meeting with our nutrient management planner, which is one of my favorite meetings of the year. I find all of that stuff so interesting to think about, and to just see where different things are at. Just sort of trying to get ourselves set up before the insanity really begins. We do have the manure pump out, and I am hoping to get the first loads of manure on the field sometime in the upcoming week. And then we'll start wandering around fixing fences and trimming brush and things like that. And that's kind of where we're at.
So are the pastures greening up a little bit at this point?
They're slightly greening, but we really are, even compared to the other Organic Valley farmers around us in this area, we really are in a pretty severe microclimate here, and so they really don't get fully green until mid-April, and we usually aren't able to turn the cows out until mid-May because, wanting to establish at least, a good 6 inches at least of grass, and our soils are really heavy and wet, and so, if we let them out too early, we lose we lose any advantage we had. So we really try to walk that careful balance of, taking care of the land and the animals at the same time. So that's kind of where we're at. You can see green. It's a hopeful shade in the fields, but we're not quite there yet.
Yeah. Our daffodils are in full bloom, and it's spring is here for us in Ohio. So I love this time of year.
I do too, and I'm so jealous. Like ours is, you can smell it in the air, but it's not quite here. You can see the daffodil blooms. They're coming, but they haven't popped yet. And
you don't raise any corn, do you?
We don't. No, we do, and we don't even do annuals. We're all perennial grasses. We have it's all permanent sod. We don't do any tillage.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So your field work in the spring is more based on pasture management and fencing and stuff like that than the actual tillage and field work.
Yeah, exactly. So it's focusing on getting the manure spread as well as we can, which obviously every year is a moving target depending on how wet the fields are. So we do a lot of manure. We do put on, our lime was delivered, and so we'll start doing some of the fertilization with lime and wood ash and alternating that. And then it's setting up the perimeter fences, figuring out, the animal groupings and where everybody's going to go and kind of getting our pasture keys ready, all of the getting everybody on the same page about the grazing rotations and things like that.
And then once the grass hits, now you've got to try to get your grazing wedge going. And it's always interesting because you don't know how fast it's going to be growing.
I know, and I'm a little worried about our water levels. We haven't made up from the drought last year. We're still about 3 inches behind in precipitation, I think. And, so that's a thought going on in my head right now, in all of our heads right now, is to sort of, it's going to be very interesting to see what the grass does. I'm not really sure what to expect, to be honest.
Yeah, I know we're pretty dry here as well. And talking to Jolyn McClelland, they're very dry. So it's just, I find these updates so interesting because of the different moisture levels in the different regions. Has so much to do with production, and there's so much out of farmers' control. And I think this is just a tiny little piece of that bigger picture of all the challenges that farmers face.
For sure. Yeah. And it, normally here, the weather patterns, even as the weather patterns have shifted and become more extreme, it still has tended to be that it goes from drought to, overcompensates. And then you have a really wet year. And then, it usually cycles. It's been kind of in a 3-year cycle of like 1 year that's pretty perfect, 1 year that's really wet, and 1 year that's really dry. And so this is, this is not normal for us to have 2 really dry years. And, we are doing feed calculations right now I think that we have enough feed to get us to when the cows go out, but it's going to be really, really tight. And that is a position in which we've never been. we've always been able to put up at least enough feed for ourselves and usually to sell to other Organic Valley farmers. And we weren't able to sell any this year and are just barely going to make it through. So yeah, definitely a lot to be thinking about, a lot to contend with. It was interesting in our soil, our nutrient management planning, our phosphorus levels are really, really low and kind of decreasing rapidly. And so trying to think about that and how to make sure that, whatever grass we can grow does have the right nutrients is going to be really critical. And in Vermont, phosphorus has become sort of the demonized component. And it's just really interesting to think. I think sometimes that people forget that nature is a complex system, and that no land base is the same as another, and that you can have a phosphorus problem in one area of a place and then have it be really low in another place and actually be causing problems, and that the danger of sort of trying to assess anything in a sweeping manner in that way. So that's been sort of an interesting thing I've been thinking about as well.
Just like you have these like microclimates, you have the exact same thing happening in the soils.
Yes, exactly.
There's such a variation from even neighbor to neighbor. It's crazy. And I live right in the area that I cover, and south of me they had the best year they've ever had last year, weather-wise.
Wow.
Production. And to the north of me, I was in the middle. I was perfect. And to the north of me, the further north I went, the drier it got. So I drove from one end of the region to the other end one day, and I couldn't believe the difference from south to north, and just grass growing because of drought in the north and almost wet in the south. And that was a total of 40 miles. So
yes,
it's crazy, these little microclimates. But just like you said about the soils, there's such a variation that you can't use the broad stroke of a brush on anything.
No, and I'm always trying to explain that in the policy realm as well, that there's a real danger in trying to use broad strokes when it comes to farming policy, because it is so dependent on the land base that you're dealing with, and the individual. It's sort of one of my advocacy points for small farms is that you want a manager, you want a land steward that understands the base that they're managing, and that the bigger that you get, when you get on a 10,000 cow dairy, like, it's really hard to believe that there's any detailed land management going on. Not to say that there isn't always, but I just think about that a lot, that we manage around 300 acres, and it's, there's a lot to keep track of just in 300 acres, and the soil types and the differing fields needs and all of those different things that you're always trying to juggle and balance out at any given moment, to make sure that you're producing the best quality that you can.
Yes. And that's, I think, the one scary part. You said you're low in phosphorus, yet phosphorus is the bad guy. You have to be really careful, especially on farms, to not use policy to remove tools that are needed as their toolbox. There's so many variations that you can't take tools out of the toolbox.
Exactly.
With broad policy.
Yes, and because I've had to explain to a few people this week that phosphorus is critical. I hadn't even really fully put this together, but phosphorus is critical for fertility, and so we have been having some breeding issues, and I think that in some ways that the people who are managing nutrients in the state are scared, right, to be too overhanded with the phosphorus, because they've been it's become such a flagged issue. And I'm sort of wondering if, in the process, like what we're seeing is that, our grain ration probably needs more phosphorus in it. And I'm wondering, the grain company was probably like, well, I can't put it up above this amount because then I'm running into an issue. And it's, now we have fertility issues. And so like you're saying, it's really, you have to really, people need to really understand that, that the farmers know what they're managing, and they know how to balance those things. They know how to apply the different science and data to achieve the outcome that's necessary for the animals' well-being and the land's. And like you're saying, if you take away a piece of that toolbox, the animals or the land can suffer. And so it's a slippery slope to go down to try to say that one thing or another is bad, period. It's just not that simple.
Yes, exactly. Well, I've taken enough of your time. I really appreciate the update, and I hope as the shoe drops and the craziness starts, I hope things work out well for you this spring, and we'll be hoping and praying you get some rain.
Thank you so much. We will be hoping and praying for that as well.
Okay. Thank you, Abbie.
Thank you.
Well, hi, everyone. Melissa Weyland from Northeastern Wisconsin here, just south of Green Bay. It is the first full week in April of 2021, and we are just very blessed up here with how absolutely incredible our spring has been. We're coming off of a very mild winter, and this morning, actually April 6th, we had an unseasonable, I will call it an unseasonable warm thunder shower, and it was this most amazing, slow, dark skied thunder shower that we all hope for in usually in July, but we had one of those this morning. And so we will start greening up very quickly here. It's been a little bit slower to green up here in northeastern Wisconsin. It's been very, very dry and an incredibly dry spring, but very hopeful that these warm temperatures and that lightning shower will definitely start to make things explode. We are not doing a lot of land working, a lot of tillage yet, or a lot of seeding, but we are doing our spring manure hauling. A lot of the conventional a lot of the conventional crop farmers in the area are getting their fertilizers spread and so on and so forth. So there is some movement, but it's quite a bit delayed in my part of the country than it is in many other areas.
How close are you getting to out on pasture? Are you still a couple weeks, or what is the normal time?
We usually hit pasture mid-May would be a safe time to typically hit. I have seen a couple folks starting to do turnout and early turnout. Now those are not organic farmers; those are conventional farmers turning out on what they call pasture, which looks a bit different than what we might do. So I think we are probably looking at a bit earlier than mid-May, maybe the first week of May here. We will see how this precipitation helps. Like I said, it's been quite dry and it's been pretty slow to green up, but it is very early April. So it is not unusual for northeastern Wisconsin to have a blizzard or a snow shower this year. I don't think that's going to happen. We've been in the 60s. So we'll see. It's like I said, it's very slow. I just walked through some of my lots the other day, and it is just very slow to come. But we're right on time. Nothing is delayed. Mm-hmm. As far as I think this goes across most of the Midwest. Cows are milking great. We've still got some good feed. The ration's decent, still coming off of last year's crop. So things are going good. Cows in general are milking better than expected. And they are absolutely loving this weather too. They're very comfortable, very happy, and they are all lining up one by one by the gate, overlooking, ready to go out to pasture. But they don't understand we've got to wait a little bit yet.
Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing you're is it a little bit the calm before the storm? So in a couple weeks, it'll be wide open to planting and haying and all that stuff. Is that, 1st of May is when that really goes crazy, or when does that take off?
Absolutely. So here in Northeastern Wisconsin, every single May, I would say the first week of May, if not the second week of May, we get into this time where we need to be putting seeds in the ground. We need to be getting cows out to pasture. We need to be doing a lot of different things, right? So you're right, that storm definitely is probably going to hit again. I'm thinking early May.
It's a beautiful time of year, though, when you start seeing, like, our daffodils are in full bloom right now, and the grass is really, really growing nice, and I just love this time of year.
It's a blast. My tulips are slowly coming up. I have one year we had the bright idea to plant 500 tulips just at one side of the house, and they put on a show every year, and so they are starting to fill out, and now the heads are finally coming up. But yeah, here actually on Easter Sunday, just a couple days ago, all of my daffodils came through too. So, and it's just been a blast watching all of the migratory birds come back. So, you have all the little, now you're starting to have what I call the singers, all the little singers, and the choir has really made its way back, and everything's just awakening. The geese have been back for a couple weeks now. I think the geese and even the sandhill crane arrivals, those are two species that they just have to announce that they're back, and they don't want you to miss it. And so they just put on their show honking and squawking at us as they come and they land in all of our fields all around us.
I saw a flock of sandhill cranes heading north yesterday, so maybe they were heading towards you.
They may have been. We have a pair. Now, sandhill cranes are one of those species that is my understanding that they mate for life. And so we have a pair that comes back to our farm every single year, and they'll raise one of their chicks on our farm. Now, I won't say sandhill cranes aren't exactly our friends, right? Especially when we're planting beans or corn. They like to go right along the row and pluck out seed by seed if they can. They're very intelligent, really, but or they really like fast food. I guess that's sandhill crane fast food, right? Where they can just go along and pluck our seeds out. But yeah, our pair has been back for a couple weeks, but of course not everybody's back. It's a long, long trip for them. So we look forward to more flying over.
Very cool. Do you have a self-help tip for us this month?
Yeah, my farmer tip this month is exactly what we've been talking about. We are just a couple weeks from the calm, or we're a couple weeks from the storm, right? Where there's this sort of lull period. Yeah, we're hauling some manure. We're starting to get ready for the season, but there's a little bit of time still to just take for your family or for your spouse. So my tip this month is to take that time to have that date night or that family night, whatever it is, because pretty soon all we know as families is work, 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 work before sun up and well after sundown. So take that time, enjoy it together. Life is short, life flies by. And we all know that as much as we love farming and the craziness, I think we all enjoy that craziness secretly and working together. Let's not forget to slow down a little bit before we get too busy.
That is great advice, Mel. Thank you so much.
This episode was brought to you by Soil Biotics, providing full circle improvement for soil health and plant growth naturally.